Hull City seemed to be making progress under Liam Rosenior, didn't they? Because he inherited a big relegation battle in 22-23 when Hull had one of the worst defences in the Championship about a third of the way into the season, and he subsequently turned their rearguard into one of the best that season. I think they lost only another 6 out of 28 games under Liam Rosenior, and steadily climbed the table with pretty much top 10 form, despite that season not really having a centre forward. And it's interesting, that theme, isn't it? Because Hull haven't really had a proper number 9 in Liam Rosenior's time there, and yet they've continued to make really steady progress, because they did the simple things really well, I think, under him in 22-23. And then the following season, not quite as good defensively, I think it's fair to say, but still dangerous going forward without that killer number 9. And he's certainly had the quality of the likes of Jaden Philogene last season, who lit everything up when fit and continued to move things forward. But from Acun Ilıcalı's point of view, and CEO Tan Kesler, it felt as though maybe missing out on the top 6 was perceived as a failure. I think you can debate that, but that was the ambitious board's point of view after the January editions. Including somebody like Fabio Carvalho, who's obviously going to improve the quality of the squad, and players like Jean-Michel Seri they had, as well as reliable operators like Alfie Jones and Regan Slater. So I think you can debate whether Liam Rosenior deserved. I think he deserved personally another opportunity, but Hull City have decided to make a change. They wanted maybe a bit more urgency than they saw from Liam Rosenior, which, again, that was their call, and they've replaced Rosenior with Tim Walter, and we'll see whether they've made the right decision. And so that's the question that we're going to be discussing. And can Hull City remain in playoff or promotion contention this season? Plenty to discuss then on this Summer Deep Dive. Yes, welcome along to the latest EFL Debate Summer Deep Dive, one of 72. We're doing club by club across the EFL between mid-June and mid-July. The full set for League 2 has been uploaded to YouTube and to Spotify, as well as a few for League 1. So go and check those out and subscribe once you're done with this episode. For now, I'm delighted to be joined by Ant Northgraves from the excellent Hull and Back podcast. Good afternoon, Ant. Thank you so much for your time. Always great to talk to you about Hull City. Did Tan Kesler and Acun Ilıcalı make the correct call in both dismissing Liam Rosenior and in appointing Tim Walter?
I don't know. I think that's going to be a question that's going to be answered by probably December this year. Listen, I think every single Hull City fan was so desperate for it to work under Rosenior. We've said this before. I've said this to you. His connection to the club and how he understands the fan base and everything around it. It seemed like a bit of a match made in heaven in terms of a young up and coming English manager partnered with an ambitious owner who really wanted to push the club forward and rebuild what had obviously been lost under the previous regime. And it just seemed like it was destined to work out. But the problem is with young, inexperienced managers is they've got stuff to learn. And as much as Rosenior was brilliant, his man management seemed brilliant and everything like that, and we had easily a really solid foundation to build something special under him. He just wouldn't budge from the style of play that at times hindered some of the creativity we've got in our team. I mean, it seemed to work perfectly away from home, but at home it was another story. We were really poor. I think we were 13th in the home table. So you're thinking, if you'd have got at least 2 more wins at home and made it a top 10 home form kind of thing, we'd have been in the top 6 because we only missed out by 3 points. So it's one of those where that's probably where you look back and you think that killer instinct and maybe not changing it a bit and going a bit more aggressive, but we were quite boring. So from that sort of perspective, you can understand why the owner has maybe made the decision he has, because like you say, he's been backed massively last season, especially in January. I imagine they've had a conversation in December before he signed his contract extension that perhaps he wanted a bit more urgency in the play, a bit more forward-thinking aggression. But and Rosenior's perhaps turned around and said, "Well, I don't have the players to do it." He's gone out and got these players for him, and we still played the same way. So you can perhaps understand that frustration a little bit. But listen, like I thought he deserved maybe at least another 6 months. I think a lot of people, I think the national media will probably agree with that too. And then if the same is still happening, then yeah, there's a decision to make. But with Tim Walter, it's a gamble. I think any manager that you appoint that's not had any experience of Championship or English football is always going to be a gamble. But I'm sure Sheffield Wednesday fans were saying the same about Danny Roll and QPR with Fuentes. You know, sometimes these gambles work, and I'm pretty sure you can find multiple examples of some abroad appointments that don't work. So it's one of those where he obviously fits the style of player the owner wants to play. I'm not going to pretend I know much about Tim Walter. I don't watch a lot of Bundesliga or Bundesliga 2. So from what I've heard on various radio shows and from what people who have seen of Tim Walter from these clubs like Hamburg fans and that, he is a very, very forward, aggressive, attacking manager. So that is obviously what the owner wants. Let's just see if it works out.
Yeah, we'll come on to Tim Walter in a moment because I have sort of canvassed some opinions on him. I wanted to ask one more question on Liam Rosenior. I don't want to dwell on it because he is part of Hull City's past, and it's important to look forward. But from my point of view, Ant, I think Liam Rosenior got a lot more right at Hull City than he got wrong, and I think that there was a far greater chance of him fine-tuning some of those home issues and finding a bit more of a balance next season. And I think that going for a bit more of an unknown, a bit more of a risk, I think was, personally, I'm not sure that was the right call, because I think you were on a very nice trajectory under Liam Rosenior. And while, yes, it's true that you are ambitious and you have got money, it's also, this ambition is quite newly found, relatively speaking, for the club, where it's only happened in the last couple of years, and you're still building a squad and things like the centre forward position, which can dictate so much if you've got the right centre forward, which Liam Rosenior hasn't had that for other than the first half of last season when he had Liam Delap on loan, and even Liam Delap was sort of 7 out of 10, but not an 8, if you like. So for me, I think give Liam Rosenior the right centre forward, give him the opportunity to learn from some of the mistakes that he made last season, but also reinforce some of the positive things that he's done, and give him the encouragement to continue to build with a club that he loves. And I think this is a manager with loads of potential. And for me, I think 5 years down the line, Hull City are going to regret letting that one go.
Yeah, I think it throughout. I mean, this isn't even just a Liam Rosenior problem, just us as a club, and in terms of luck we've had with injuries to key personnel at key moments of the season and things like that. And like I say, I think if we'd have had Liam Delap fit for the final 6 months of the campaign, we'd have probably been in the top 6. I think he easily wins you 7 or 8 points in the 6 months that he spent out injured. Aaron Connolly was just made of glass, even though he made a decent sort of contribution in the early parts of the season. He mostly coming off the bench as well, but he was just, he's not a reliable, dependable player because he was injured every 2 or 3 weeks. And then we had obviously Billy Sharp, who's way past his best, which was a bizarre signing in the first instance. Agreed. Anyway. But I think what maybe the problem was, and when you look back at it, is we don't quite know, and I don't think it'll ever come out as to, because there's been a lot of reports that the relationship between the owner and Rosenior started breaking down sort of end of January, beginning of February time. So you don't maybe know if he sort of stuck to his guns and his style of system just as a means of being a bit more stubborn and saying, no, I'll show you it works kind of thing. But realistically, as good as a player Delap was, we maybe should have sent him back to Man City and then used that free loan spot to then find another player who's a similar caliber, rather than gambling on the fact that he might be back for the playoffs towards the end of the season. We brought in Ohio, who's young. He scored a lot of important goals, but he's not a kind of signing you want to make if you're charging for the top 6 and you haven't got a natural striker in the side. So, yeah, I mean, there were a lot of question marks over maybe some of the transfers we made. I mean, if you think, Philogene was lightning in the first 6 months of the season, playing off the left-hand side, and then we signed Anas Sarori, who was great for Burnley last season. But we had to then shift Philogene out of his favoured position from the left onto the right.
It's a balance issue, isn't it, Ant? It's not necessarily the net value of the squad. It's like the distribution of that net value. And it's like you've gone for a veteran and an unproven talent at centre forward. Well, you'd rather have a PK centre forward. Don't need to prioritise someone coming off the left, because you've got Philogene, who I think when fit, you could argue is the best player in the league. So again, it's like, is the recruit... You've got the money, you've got the ambition, but is the recruitment process joined up? I think there's a big lesson to be learned from that.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at our recruitment at the minute, and I mean, if you're talking, I'm sure you'll get onto all City's transfer, well, lack of transfers this summer when it comes up. But yeah, I mean, I think what's happening is Acun's probably now learning alongside us how to run a football club and how to be in transfer windows. So obviously, his first transfer window, he went gung ho and signed as many players as he possibly could. A vast majority from abroad that weren't physically capable for this league, and we had a lot of injuries. And then last season we went more domestically, but we perhaps signed, like you say, imbalanced players, and then were too, Rosenior said he wanted robust players, reliable, that we could sign for the league, but then still went for Aaron Connolly and players like Ruben Vinagre who were sick notes and were always injured. So you don't realistically know what our transfer policy is at the minute, or who's deciding what, and who's the real brains behind it. There's been some articles out about, a lot of City fans will laugh for this brain team that Acun and Tan call it, where they've got a team of people who discuss transfers and then just take it to Acun and see if he can buy them, kind of thing. But there doesn't seem to be methodology into the signings we're making at the minute, and obviously this is a massive summer transfer window for us now, and trying to hold on to some of our best players, but not really knowing the true extent of our financial problems as well. So it's one of them where it's probably a harsh lesson for Acun and Tan to have learned, and we'll just have to see where it goes.
Final word from me on Liam Rosenior. I have to commend how he's carried himself throughout this whole process, because even in the media, when it seems now like the relationship might have broken down behind closed doors, from you were saying late January, he was always so positive. He spoke so warmly and fondly of Tan Kesler and Acun Ilıcalı, and you wouldn't have guessed it at all. And even after being sacked in really harsh circumstances, he was classy to the end. So I have absolutely nothing but the biggest admiration for that man, and I think he's set for a very successful career in management. So good luck to him.
Yeah, he's always been the ultimate professional, and I think no one expected any less of him. I mean, his statement that he obviously made through the LMA after he was sacked was just what everybody expected. We all love Rosenior. There's no one here now that, even just because he's been sacked, we don't look back at him and regret him. We love the fact that he had the chance here, and I think a vast majority of City fans would have liked to him, like you say, have at least another 6 months in the job to try and rectify the problems that had occurred last season and work on it. But it's one of those where the owner's got a plan. He's sticking with it. We've got to just sort of go with it. But yeah, Liam Rosenior will do great. I think he's just got to learn maybe to adapt a bit as management goes on, and he'll learn lessons from this, and he'll take it on board. I'm 100% sure of that, and he'll take that into his next job. And I imagine he'll take his time. He won't rush into another one. He'll want to make sure it's the right project. But yeah, he'll go far.
Absolutely. So Tim Walter then, Ant, I'm not like you mentioned, you're not expecting you to be an expert on German football and all that kind of thing. So I did actually canvass some opinions on Tim Walter back in May when he was linked with the job. So I thought I'd just read out a few of the various comments and sort of, see where we are with that. Obviously, I appreciate you're probably going to judge him when he's Hull City manager and what he does that. But I thought let's have a bit of a taster. So the first comment that I've got is, with very few exceptions, he preferred the 4-3-3, which he basically labelled offensive at any price. His explanations after defeats became worn out over time, but 2 avoided relegation saved him anyway because the fans celebrated it. In terms of character, I would define Tim Walter as extremely loyal to his favourite players, and newcomers almost always have a hard time finding their place in the team. But he's incorrigible, warm-hearted, emotional, motivating, and a fighter. Another perspective here from Tim Whitsey. A bit stubborn, especially when it came to his football idea, but also protected the team very well from the media when times were bad. His football was interesting and very fun to watch, but also sometimes frustrating when, for example, you fight back from from being 2-0 down, and at 2-2 he opens all floodgates and throws everything in just to lose 4-2. As a person, again, going back to the other comment, he is incredibly passionate. He's a motivator and helped form a unit again. Stylistically, he's offensive and possession-based. Defensively, pretty bad, though. It's basically who can score the most goals most of the time. Bit of an obvious thing to say, I suppose. Matthew Karagic from the Two Bundesliga podcast reckons Walter showed to be a pretty capable manager throughout his time with Holstein Kiel and Hamburger SV, not so much at Stuttgart. His teams play very attractive, possession-intensive football for the most part. The biggest criticism of Walter is usually the absence of a plan B. Louis Ostrowski, who I think is also from the same podcast, says Walter is a really divisive figure, can be brilliant when it all works, but can't coach a defence and doesn't learn from his mistakes. Difficult character too at times, not the kind of guy I'd want after a controversial sacking of a popular coach. Interesting. I think there's a mixed bag there. Let me just check in case. One more comment from Tiki Taka HSV. Tim Walter stands for possession with all the 11. It starts at the back with the goalkeeper chain, which he always uses to create numerical advantages. Sometimes it is also super high to achieve exactly that. He usually plays 4-3-3 and uses an extremely large number of positional castlings. For example, one centre-back plays the ball across to the other, then immediately looks for the vertical next to the deep six. This play and walk is typical Walter and is used by almost every player in the chain. Most of the time you use it to dominate centrally because the outsiders always keep the width. The eights have a high variability in the Walter system, ranging from half space to gluing to the rail. I'm not 100. I think that might be saying to the flank. There's some translation issues here, so I'm doing my best with that. The solutions here usually lie with the player himself. The final third, especially, is often super connected by the staggering through playing and walking. Throughout Walter's tenure, HSV always had one of the highest XG values of all teams in the league. Against the ball, you need a defensively strong spine to really enforce Walter ball. If you don't have the personnel to defend everything away, then Walter teams have problems because you make yourself extremely susceptible to the counterattacks through this style. Just got a few more to go through. I know this is quite a lot. On a human level, Walter is a very charismatic guy who always puts his team first. He'll back his players. He lives for the club and is extremely appreciated for it, especially by fans. From time to time, however, he can cross a line. Many non-HSVers find Walter arrogant, but he's worked a lot on himself. As someone who has followed him for a long time, you can say that he is a stroke of luck. He can carry players, fans, and a club along, but he is certainly a coach for a longer plan and nothing to put out the fire. Interesting. So a lot to absorb there, Ant. Anything there that sort of big takeaways from that?
Well, he certainly fits the bill for what the owner wants. If he's gung-ho football, I'm going to score more goals than you, because ever since Acun's taken over, that's been his whole thing. You know, he said rather lose a game 4-3 than draw 0-0, and points-wise doesn't make sense. But he's saying, obviously, for like over the course of a few games, he'd rather win lose than draw them, because entertainment value, and he's all about bringing fans back and ensuring that people feel like they're getting the money's worth and things like that. So yeah, no. And with us having Rosenior's style, where it was more tepid and it was sideways and it was safe, very similar to Southgate's England at the minute. He's wanting somebody who's going to obviously go to the extreme, and it sounds like Tim Walter fits that bill. We've always been very susceptible at the back. That was probably our Achilles heel last season, was that we were just so prone to conceding sloppy, easy goals. Sometimes defensively, we would just give goals away, especially when we're at moments of the game where we've missed 6 or 7 chances, and then the team will go up the other end and score probably their first chance of the game, and then we'd struggle to then break that team down and get back into the game. But and then also the lack of plan B. That's something that apparently is a recommendation for Hull City fans in the last to be Hull City manager in the last few years or so. We tend to have a manager who has plan A or no way. So yeah, no. Listen, as a fan, until I've seen enough games under him, for me, I'm going to let my judgment be from what he does as Hull City manager. There's a lot of question marks over the fact that he didn't manage to get Hamburg out of the second division in Germany, when realistically there should be one of those big clubs who are getting promoted. But to me, it seems as an outsider looking in, like we say, I've got no expertise in Bundesliga 2 or anything like that, but from the outside looking in, it looks like the problems at that club's more than the manager, because there have been other managers who have gone there and have done the same. They've failed to get them promoted, and you can look at it similar to like Chelsea and Man United, where it's realistically probably not the manager that's the issue with these clubs. There's deeper rooted problems that need to be sorted in that respect. So Listen, he's going to come in, like we say, he's now got an owner who believes in him, wants him, will probably back him. I mean, the issue he'll have at the minute is the squad's pretty thin, and the players we've got probably aren't the caliber of player that can incorporate the style of play he wants to play. But there's still a long time left of the transfer window. I know that the season starts in 5 weeks, but we'll have to see who goes and then what money we've got to spend and then what he can assemble from that, because he's repeatedly said that we're not going to sign players for the sake of it. He's going to sign players that, are real quality and that will fit into his system, which sounds good because I feel like we've probably gone for quantity over quality before. So it's nice to know that we're actually identifying targets and taking our time over it.
Previously, Ant, the stance for the club under Acun Ilıcalı has been to hold out for the biggest possible fees for the likes of Jacob Greaves and probably in it now for Jaden Philogene, yeah, and maybe you could Terry into that category as well. But I'm wondering, are we looking at possibly a reduced budget and or maybe incomings depending on a big money exit?
I don't know, because we get conflicting claims from people like Tan himself, where they say, we had a lot of concerns last season, especially after January, where, where are we financially and things like that. And you'd like to say, you think they've got enough credit in the bank to take their word for it. And they've said repeatedly that we're fine. Acun said earlier this year when he announced Volta was appointed that we've got a £15 million transfer budget. That's before, obviously, we've sold anybody and things like that, so it might change. Obviously, Tufan's left now as well. He was in his last year of contract. We've got a fee for him and, big wages off the wage bill. So, but at the minute where it's only really players leaving and then the bizarre situation of us signing Ryan Giles and him potentially going straight back out to Middlesbrough on a permanent.
Yeah. Was that an obligation to buy thing, the Ryan Giles?
Yeah, so both the clubs reported that it was an option, but I do remember that when it was first announced that we'd signed him on loan, that I do remember that it was an obligation to buy in summer. So now that we've bought him, it seems like we had to, because we agreed to do it as per his original loan deal. But maybe Volta don't fancy him and Middlesbrough might pay, I don't know, we might make a profit on him.
That'd be funny, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so you sign a player and then make an instant profit on him, then, fair play. But I think what the frustrating thing is that at the minute we're only letting players go and we're not bringing any in. And signing somebody like Ryan Giles, who is a proven very, very good fullback at championship level and in an aggressive, forward-thinking system that Volta wants to play, you might get the best out of him. I mean, he was underutilised by Rosenior because his system perhaps was a bit too conservative for somebody like Giles. But bringing him in for somebody like Volta would have made sense. So, yeah, no, that's a bizarre one. But again, it just raises question marks in the fan base as to where we realistically stand in terms of, how close we are to FFP and things. But, listen, the rumours around Jaden have been swelling for ages. And if it results in a bidding war where teams just up each other and we end up getting a max amount of money for him, then fair play. We all knew he was going to go.
He's too good for the championship, in my opinion.
He is. And this is the thing, we knew instantly that when we didn't go up, that we're going to lose Greaves and Philogene. That they were the two players that you would have put your house on leaving this summer anyway. So all it is now is a case of getting, what we feel is worth for him. Like Acun said, he'll refuse any offers until a player turns around and says, I want to go. So he will not keep a player here if he has expressed a desire to leave, because then he doesn't want players that don't want to be part of this project, which is understandable. But then he also won't be lowballed by him. So, the Barcelona rumour where they wanted him on loan with an option to buy in summer.
Barcelona getting someone on loan from Hull.
I know.
Seemingly
confirmed by the local press today that was an inquiry, but the club.
You want to help out these smaller clubs, Ant.
Exactly. We've got to. Barca are in trouble. We need to help them. But a loan for our best player doesn't make sense. You want to be getting money for him or keep him, don't you? You don't want to be losing someone like Philogene for a year and not getting any money for him. So that was always going to be a bizarre one. And then there was his agent turning up at the new camp and when he wasn't supposed to and getting told to leave and all. that was a bit of a fiasco, like I know them wingy thing. But yeah, listen, Greaves and Philogene will go for a lot of money. And then I'd imagine that money will go some way to help him Volta sort of build the squad that he wants. And it's just now, obviously, fans are rightly getting concerned that, time's running out. The season's starting soon. And obviously you've got friendlies and stuff like that. You've got to bed players in. You've got to sign. You've got to get used to the area, used to the system and everything like that. You don't want to be sort of doing a full squad assemble at the beginning of the season when you've just had such a promising season where you finished outside the playoffs. And at the minute, realistically, City fans are trying to scramble for any optimism that we could even get into the top half this season with the current squad that we've got. So we do need to pull the proverbial finger out at the minute and maybe get some signings in the door. But I imagine it all at the minute is stemming down to us holding out for the money that we can get for some of these players.
Certainly does. So goalkeeping position then, and Ethan Ingram, would you be happy with him starting as your number one goalkeeper next season?
I think it'd be Panda. I think it'd be Ivo Panda. There was
interesting.
Yeah, he was brought in January, and we assumed he was going to be brought in to be number one. Obviously, Ryan Alsop had a very difficult season last season where, a few notable mistakes probably cost us a lot of points in the running. And there was the whole thing of when Acun did his evening with the fans where he seemed to suggest that he was quite surprised that despite these regular mistakes from Alsop that Rosenior didn't put Panda in goal to obviously either take him out of the limelight or put what he believes is a superior goalkeeper in goal. And it's one of these where I think if Walter's wanting to play a similar system to Rosenior where he wants possession based, and if it's going to start with the goalkeeper, then unfortunately that's not Matt Ingram's forte, and that's the reason he didn't play Rosenior and Alsop did. Rosenior's argument always was with Alsop that he gives us more in possession than what he does like as a goalkeeper. I mean, you've obviously got your goalkeeper's ultimate job is to keep the ball out of the goal, which is something that Alsop struggled to do for the most part. But his pro was that distribution-wise and being on the ball, he was pretty good at that. And he did help us control possession in that way, and he did create some goals in the sense of, his range of passing and things like that. But we haven't seen Panda. We don't actually know how good he is. We're just assuming he's pretty good. He's come with rave reviews from Fortuna Sittard, so I would imagine that he's going to be number one this season, and I think we'd be looking to offload Ingram. We have also got Harvey Cartwright and obviously Timothy Lottatala, who had a really good season at Doncaster. He might be number two this season. So we're pretty loaded in the goalkeeper persuasion. And obviously Alsop's gone to Birmingham, and I think Ingram will be following him out. And I would imagine Panda number one and then Tatala number two, with Cartwright probably going back out on loan.
That makes a lot of sense. I imagine Panda might be quite commanding because I've heard the expression "never enter Panda's box."
We're excited to see him. We are. I mean, it's one of these where we were pining for him to be in goal, but we realistically didn't know how good he is. But we paid, I think, just under $2 million for him. So he comes with rave reviews. He's a young keeper, and I think he got him Player of the Season as well. So Team of the Season, sorry, for the league he was in. So it's one of these where he could come in and be absolutely amazing. He could come in and be just as bad as Alsop. But it was the fact that Alsop was having regular mistakes and continued to keep his place when you could have maybe taken him out the firing line a bit. I think there was a bit of a grudge point for the owner.
Yeah, exciting one actually that Panda was with Croatia under 21s as recently as 2021. So clearly a goalkeeper of high potential. So hopefully he can fulfil that at the KCOM. So we know it's going to be 4-3-3 almost certainly because that's the formation that Tim Walter likes. At the moment, you've just got one right back, and that's Louis Coyle. So where are you at with his performance levels?
Louis Coyle's probably one of the most unsung heroes. Actually, I think he started to get a lot of credit that he deserves from our fan base last season. But he's the club captain. He's the solid, dependable 7-8 out of 10 out of every week. He throws his body on the line. The amount of times he had his nose bust last season, he was a warrior. He was playing injured through most games and carrying himself through to the end of the match. And he's one of those who will literally, fans want a player that's going to give 110% every second he's on the pitch and play for the badge, and that is Louis Coyle. So
has he got the quality that you need if you want to play a really exciting attacking style of football with your fullbacks really high up the pitch?
You see, I think he's got a really good delivery from his cross. I think the question marks will be whether he's got the pace to be up and down the line as much as Volta might want him to be. Because defensively he's brilliant, and like we say, he has got a really good cross on him. So in terms of creating goals, he can be a real asset.
He's versatile, just to add to the strengths, Ant. He's versatile because if you need to rejig the back three, which I think Rosenior did a bit, or invert one of the fullbacks and bring Coyle into the defence and all that sort of thing, he's quite good with that side of things.
He ended up playing centre back for a brief few moments towards the end of the game at Ellen Road at Leeds away, and he did really well there. So, and he's played left back as well. He's a bit like. He's a bit like how Southgate's using Saka at the minute. He's just, Mr. Versatile. If you want him on the pitch, he'll play wherever you put him.
Yeah, So so I think it could be a big season for Louis Coyle. I'm going to be curious to see how it works out from an attacking perspective and whether he can deliver what Tim Walter's going to want. But certainly, I think he can deliver that consistent 7 out of 10, like you say, and be very strong defensively and versatile. So centre backs now. Jacob Greaves is an interesting one because he's had some challenges getting into the team over the last couple of years that people wouldn't have expected so much. But the form of Alfie Jones, of course, and McLaughlin has made things maybe more difficult for him than he would have liked, and sometimes he had to fill in at left back, hasn't he? So what do you think is in store for Jacob Greaves, and do you still see him as one of Hull City's biggest assets?
He's Premier League bound. I think, barring last season, he had to really compete with McLaughlin for that other centre back space. But as soon as obviously we had a fit left back that we could play last season, Greaves was straight in the starting 11 and didn't look back. And I think he finished as the highest rated centre half according to Who Scored statistically. Obviously got in team of the season centre back as well. He's gold dust, Gabe. He is young, he's English, he's versatile, like we say, he can play across the back four, he could probably play in midfield if you asked him to. He's comfortable on the ball, he likes to take the ball out of the pitch, he'll go on an amazing run towards the box, he's left-footed, and he's good in the air. He dominates his aerial battle, so you can understand why Premier League teams are now starting to take that real interest in him and probably put some formal bids in. I think it's a pipe dream that he stays with us this season. I think it's realistic now to just expect he's going to be gone. He's obviously, in terms of FFP and PSR rules and everything like that, he is an academy graduate, so what we sell him for will be 100% profit. So I think the 20 million, I think, will probably be the asking price, I'd imagine. If you look at similar players who have gone for like Howard Bellis, springs straight to mind. He went to 20 million as well.
I could easily see Ipswich be willing to pay something like that.
Yeah, I think what really, especially with the current state of maybe the England defence, you can look at him and say that if he goes to the Premier League this season, has a couple of decent years, he's going to be in England reckoning. I think he's one of these players who is just got a really, really high ceiling, and you can't begrudge him a move now as City fans. He's probably stayed a season longer than we expected him to, and we knew realistically that missing out on top six last season, that would probably be the last time we saw Jacob Greaves in a Hull City shirt. But listen, if he stays, absolutely brilliant. If he leaves, we're going to get a nice chunk of money in return for him. So, and we'll wish him the best and probably see him rinsing it in the Premier League as well. But I think at the minute, it's looking like Jones and McLaughlin will be the centre backs.
Yeah, I guess as much as I completely agree with you, I'm a massive fan of Jacob Greaves, and I think he has huge potential. I don't necessarily see his selling him for 20 million to be the worst thing in the world, because it's not like you're significantly weakened in the centre back position. It's like you're going from a 7 and 8 out of 10 to 2 7s out of 10 in Jones and McLaughlin, or maybe 7.5, because Jones has been so consistent for you. So I don't see a huge loss in terms of the centre. It's obviously a great player that you're losing, but it's like I think Jones and McLaughlin are fantastic as well. So I think again that means that you've got 20 million to sort of reinvest in other areas, and that might help with what we talked earlier, which is about the balance of the squad, really.
Yeah. I mean, any Championship club receiving anything like £20 million for a player, they're going to find it really, really hard to turn down. I think it was reported that Ipswich had offered 30 million for Philogene and Greaves as a pair, which I think is probably them testing the water initially, because to me, Greaves is 20 million, Philogene would be about 25. I think that's probably what we want to be looking at, is 40 to 45 million for the pair of them. But Greaves is a fantastic player, and I think it's, like you say, it's going to be a massive loss to lose him. Maka is a dependable defender. I think he's more of a robust defender than Greaves is, but he perhaps offers you less offensively in terms of being on the ball and taking the ball and things like that. It's not really Maka's game. But like you say, it would leave us really with like 2 first-choice centre-backs. We'd maybe have to look, because I think the options behind them would be the likes of Andy Smith, Stan Ashby, and Alfie Taylor and players like that. So we probably need to be looking at another defender, maybe a more experienced one, just to call upon if needs be. But £20 million.
Go on.
£20 million realistically, like you say, we need another. We probably realistically need another 10, 12 players if you're looking at the squad, because we need 3 strikers. for
Yeah,
starters, because we don't have any. We need another left back if Giles goes. We need another right back for Coyle cover and a few
sure.
midfielders. So yeah, £20 million will go a long way.
Yeah, certainly would. I think I would be. Andy Smith has done really well in the National League and League Two with Grimsby. But and if his loan at Cheltenham had gone well, I would have said maybe get him in there as that sort of fourth choice centre half and have him as part of the first team squad. However, his loan at Cheltenham didn't quite go as well as I was expecting. So I think for Andy Smith, it might be that he has to seek pastures new, maybe on loan, possibly even permanently, to sort of because I think it could be a bit of a stretch for him to get into a top six aspiring championship side in the short to mid-term future. So again, I think that could be where he's at. But then I don't know if you know where Stan Ashby's at with his development and how he's coming along.
Well, Andy Smith was on the bench for the first 6 months of the season, and obviously we sent him out on loan in January, and Stan Ashby sort of took his spot on the bench. We didn't really see that much of him, but when he played, I think he played in the cup game, and he looks a good player. I mean, obviously the legacy's there with him being Ian Ashby's son. You know, captain fantastic for us throughout them years, so he's got maybe a bit of credit in the bank as well. But listen, there's from what Rosenior was saying when he talks about him, he's a player with a big future. But again, it's like, do you realistically have the confidence to call upon a player so young? Say, for example, Alfie Jones got injured. Is he at a point where we could realistically chuck him into the starting 11 in the Championship for 3-4 weeks while Jones was injured and be confident that he could sort of, you know, be ready for that sort of challenge? It's one of those where you'd like to believe that the club are as good as we've been with some of our youth players in the past and things, that it's okay having those options there, but you do need experience to call upon as well, just in case, because, like you say, it's a big ask to chuck these players in at a young age and expect them to do as good.
Yeah, I think the balance. I think there's a balancing act where you've got to you want to create pathways for these players, but you also want to protect yourselves in terms of not having to rely on them so much. And I think the compromise would be to maybe keep Stan Asprey on as a fourth choice centre back, so that he can get some minutes next season. But you've also, if anything happens to Alfie Jones or Shane McLaughlin, you've got a third choice centre back to come in. So I think that's going to be really important. Left back, we've talked about Ryan Giles. I wanted to ask you actually about Matty Jacob, because while pre-season's coming up shortly, the pre-season games, is there a world where Matty Jacob gets his opportunity in pre-season before you sign a left back and actually impresses so much that he ends up coming into that conversation for the league next season?
I think there is. I think there's a real possibility that he goes into our season as our first choice left back.
Right.
Listen, Matty Jacob sort of came out of nowhere. We obviously had real left back problems, especially for the first 6 months of the season when we signed Vinagre and he was always injured. It was a position we really needed to sort of work on, and I think Rosenior played him in the cup against Birmingham, and he was really, really good in both those games. Gave him a chance in the league as well, and whenever he was called upon, he was really good. And then obviously we brought Giles in. Understandably, he then becomes the starting left back, and as good as Giles was, we didn't see the best of him. Perhaps maybe a victim of the system. But whenever Jacob came into the team, I mean, towards the end of the season, he kept Giles out the side. Again, he's just like a left-footed Louis Coyle. He puts his entire body on the line. I think there's probably a clip somewhere on Twitter you can find of him. He literally tackles somebody. He's laid on the floor, and then he just throws his head at the ball at another player's feet, potentially getting kicked in the head. And that sort of epitomises him as a player. I mean, obviously he's perhaps maybe got to work a bit going forwards, but I think there's a player there. I really do, and I wouldn't be too disheartened as a Hull City fan to see Matty Jacob as the starting left back next season. And we have got James Furlong as another left back choice, but he's one of these signings who we brought in from Brighton, expecting him to be the backup to Vinagre, and even with Vinagre injured, they didn't play him there. They played Greaves there, and we didn't really see anything of him. So it was a really bizarre signing, and I just don't know if he's not quite the player they expected to get. But there is a potential for him to be the second choice left back. But again, it's question marks over him. We don't quite know what's going on there.
Yeah, I guess you'd probably want to have a bit more of a league proven option there. So someone who could maybe come in for Matty Jacob, or ideally someone to start as a left back, and Jacob might start 10 games. Because I think to ask Matty Jacob to be your starting left back, I'm not sure Brandon Fleming's going to quite be at the level that you're going to need, especially if we're saying, I mean, just to put it
Yeah,
into context, by the ownership's stance, not getting top six was a failure last season, but according to them. So
yeah,
if we're holding you to those sorts of standards, then I think what you don't want to do is sort of be relying on youngsters like Furlong and Jacob only. You want a bit more of a
yeah.
proven option in there as well.
Brandon Fleming's a bizarre one because under for the last 6 months of the season, when Shota Awaladze first took over, he was arguably one of our best players for the last few months of that season. And then obviously last season he went out on loan, and he went on loan to League One and didn't do very well at all. And it's one of these where he's also a player who's regularly plagued by injuries. He's in his early 20s, but he's not actually played that many games because he's constantly missing through injuries and stuff. But whenever he's played for Hull City, he's looked good. But whenever he's gone out on loan, he doesn't seem to do very well. And I just don't know if his future is with us, or if we're going to look to move him on, because it's a strange one. Because I like Fleming, and I'd probably be prone to give him a chance, but I just don't think realistically the plans of the club are to keep him. I just think he's going to be moved on.
Yeah, that makes sense. By the way, apologies for calling Sean McLaughlin, Conor McLaughlin. I'm getting my names a little bit mixed up today. So central midfield then, and we know it's probably going to be a three-man midfield based on the 4-3-3 that Tim Walter likes. Jean-Michel Seri is on paper the key man, because he's by far the most technically accomplished midfielder at the club. Are you confident that you're going to retain him this summer?
I don't know. It's the way the club's going. It looks like they're trying to offload the high earners, and Seri is certainly one of the highest earners. He wouldn't be here, let's be realistic, if he wasn't compensated well enough for it. I'd like to think that he's got at least another year with us. He is probably one of the most technically gifted footballers I've seen play for us. I think he's absolutely phenomenal. He sometimes gets a bit of a bad rap. I mean, the guy makes so many passes a game that if one of them goes astray, that's the one that some fans choose to latch onto and say, "Oh, he's giving the ball away," and that's the problem. But they don't. They miss the other 700 accurate ones
Yeah.
that have took us forward on the pitch. When he doesn't play for us, we miss him. He's absolutely vital to the system that we played under Rosenior. I can imagine if Volta wants somebody to control the tempo and have a really wide, accurate passing range, Seri is going to be key to that. And yeah, there was question marks over him defensively. I remember me and you talking about it before. Question marks over whether Seri could be used in sort of that deep lying role, because you realistically wanted more of a natural sort of rustle and bustle number 6. But defensively, he gets stuck in. It surprises me how much he does get stuck in and tackles. He does give away a few yellows, but he knows when and when not to do it. His yellows are normally professional fouls and stopping the team from getting through one-on-one with the defence. But no, Seri is absolutely vital to us, and I would like to see him here for another year. That'll be one to possibly keep an eye on. I think someone asked his missus if he was going to stay with us on Instagram, and she put something like "God will decide." But that's just that to me is just a normal thing for someone with faith to say. He could stay here, and they would say the same thing, wouldn't they?
I guess my concern, Ant, would be if we look at your 9 out of 10 performers, it's Jacob Greaves, it's Jean-Michel Seri, whether you'd class him as a 9, maybe more like an 8, 8 out of 10 certainly, and it's Jaden Philogene when fit. So those are your sort of 3 big hitters, if you like. And I'm just wondering, if you cash in on Jacob Greaves for 20 million, possibly there's going to be interest in Jaden Philogene as well, and possibly Jean-Michel Seri. My worry would be that it's one thing getting the money for those players, but are you going to be able to bring in the same quality? Because you missed out on the top 6 last season with those players, so you've got to work quite hard in recruitment just to get back to that level. If you lose those 3 big hitters, let alone actually get better than that and break into the top 6. So that would be a bit of a concern for me. It's like, it's one thing getting rid of the high earners, but they're high earners for a reason, right? Because they're top performers for the team, and in a way, you don't want to lose them from a performance perspective.
Yeah, I mean, this is the worrying thing, understandably, with the fan base at the minute, is that the players that are leaving are mainly at the minute our source of goals. Philogene was our top scorer. He's looking like he's going to go. Obviously, Liam Delap was on loan. He's going to go back. Aaron Connolly, he's been released at the end of his 1 year deal. Then we had Noah Haya, who's on loan, so he's gone back. Ozan Tufan, he's been sold. So literally all of our goals have gone. So at the minute, we have no goal scorers in the squad. So you would look to think, well, you'd hope to think that, like you say, the players that keep us ticking over and that reliable spine of every week, your series and players like that they would hopefully be wanted to, well, they would do everything that the club could do to keep them here. It's just, we don't know what Walter thinks of Seri yet, if he fits into his system or not.
I would imagine he will do. I think that's highly likely.
I mean, if any manager comes in and looks at John Michael Seri and goes, no, he's not for me, I think they probably need the head testing. But you don't know, do you? You don't know if maybe he's not mobile enough for what Walter wants to do, if he's not box to box. But I think towards the end of the season, when Rosenior was asking Seri to man mark players at the edge of the opposition's box and was, following, I think Southampton away was a brilliant example where he man marked Smallbone. He just literally followed him all over the pitch, and he played obviously 120 minutes in one of the games for Ivory Coast. He's still got it, Seri, and he can do that. So
I would have thought that would be more of a Regan Slater type of job, actually.
We actually started playing Slater as a right back when Coyle was injured, so that's why Slater wasn't in midfield. We played obviously Tyler Morton and Tyler Morton alongside Seri with Tufan or Carvalho in the 10. But yeah, the midfield's a worrying thing at the minute, because obviously we released Greg Doherty as well, who's got a really good move to Charlton, I think I've just seen. At the minute,
signing for Charlton, you think?
Oh, great signing for Charlton. I think at League One level, Greg Doherty, whoever he goes to, was a fabulous signing. I think every single City fan wanted him to go and play football. We all would have happy had him here, but he's just not quite at the level that the club wanted to be at. So he didn't really get the minutes that perhaps he deserved. So I think he's one of those players that fans probably actually were quite happy to see move on, because we'd rather see him playing football than just sat on the bench. He's a great guy, solid 8 out of 10 midfielder all the time, grafter, box to box. Charlton fans will have an absolute ball with Greg Doherty, so good luck to him there. But our midfield's pretty thin, to say the least. Seri, Slater, Callum Jones, I think, from memory, and
we got Tinsdale and Louis Coyle's brother. I forget his first name. Rocco Coyle, thank you. And Selly, who I think was on loan last season. Let me check. Yeah, Uriel Selly was on loan at Club Universitario de Deportes. The Selly
one's a strange one, because I'm not actually sure we'll ever see him play. I don't know what that transfer was all about. We signed him as this really, really promising young Chilean lad. Sent him out on loan as soon as we signed him, then sent him out on loan again. And again, now with the change of management, you don't know what's going to go on with that transfer.
But he's actually Peruvian, Anthony.
He's not Peruvian,
yeah, no, but he's played a game for Peru in the last couple of years. So albeit only one appearance. I don't know. I'd be lying if I said I know what the situation is there. So it might be. You might be absolutely right that there's not a plan for him. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, like, even in terms of wingers, we've got Ryan Longman coming back from his loan spell at Millwall. We've got Jason Lakilo coming back from his loan spell, but he was underwhelming when he was here as well. We've still got Abdul Shomer, who was absolutely fantastic, and I think he's one player that we absolutely have to try and hold on to, because he's going to be a real asset for us next season.
Oh, really?
Brilliant. Omer, if you put a question out to any City fans asking their thoughts on Omer, you'll just get positive back. Maybe he didn't quite get the numbers that he deserved, but he is just one of those players who is very, very technically gifted, but he's one of those rare commodities in that he's quite a flair player, but he's happy to run back, defend. We made the joke all the time at home games when I was watching us that no matter where someone went to pass the ball, it always seemed to be to him. No matter where it was on the pitch, he just doesn't stop. He's absolutely everywhere. Yeah, he's absolutely fantastic.
Would you put him ahead of Jason Lokilo in the?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, he comes on. He plays on the right side. He cuts in on his left. He could probably play as number 10 if you wanted him to.
That's quite a valuable thing, a left-footed player, because a lot of the time there's probably more right-footed players who cut inside from the left. So if you're a left-footed player cutting inside from the right, that can add to your value a little bit. So Oh, that's really exciting to hear. And
Yeah,
also
it gave us an exciting dynamic because we had obviously Omer coming on off the right, then you had Carvalho in the 10, and then you had Philogene coming in off the left. So it gave us a lot of threat, obviously, in terms of going forwards. And obviously, Philogene and Carvalho got the goals, and Omer probably didn't quite get the goals his performances deserved, but he had a lot of chances, and he was just so unlucky with some of them that you feel like when he gets his first goal, he'll be up and running. But yeah, no, he's some player.
Very exciting then. The striker position is an interesting one because you've got Oscar Estupinian, who was out on loan last season. We know Estupinian can finish. There's a finisher in there because he scored in sort of clunks, if you like. But then beyond that, you've got Henry Sander and I think it's Tyrrell Sellers-Fleming as your striker options, and both of them are completely unproven, I think, in senior terms. So striker's a big priority, as it's been for the last few years, really.
Huge. I believe in his last TalkSport interview he did, Acun, he said that we're very close, probably within the next week, to signing a striker that we've loved. Now, my heart is saying I'm hoping that's Liam Delap, but the £20 million or £10 million price tag Man City put on him probably means that we're not getting him permanently if that was to happen, unless they've structured some deal similar to Philogene where we pay a lower sum of money.
Could it be that Man City go for Philogene and then you're able to get Delap as part of that deal?
Well, I don't think City need Philogene, and I don't think they're one of the clubs in for him, but no, that would be nice. I think the Philogene one, the most promising one I've seen, is that Palace are in for him and we could get Raksaki coming the other way. Now, that would be...
Oh, now you're talking.
Yeah, money plus Raksaki, I think, would be probably the best outcome, I think, in terms of losing Philogene, because you're getting another promising young player coming in then, and you don't have to think about replacing Philogene so much. But no, so strikers, I'd like us to see the club try and structure a deal with Delap similar to what we did with Philogene and Villa, where we pay a lower sum of money but have, buyback clauses or sell-on fees or X amount of money after whatever appearances. Pay less now and sort of structure out over a few years, because I feel like Liam Delap is a player that we desperately need to bring in permanently. I mean, if we have to have him on loan for another season, I'm not going to say no. But I'd like to see him have his permanent home here, and I think he did like it here from what I've seen and things like that. And Man City aren't going to use him, so it's one of these where I can't understand why they'd want to keep him anyway.
20 million seems like quite a tall price tag for me, actually, for Liam Delap.
I think it was 10 million. Thinking about it, yeah, I think 20 million was what Liverpool were asking for Tyler Morton, which again I think is a bit steep.
I mean, if you get £50 million in terms of incomings this summer, which I don't think is out of the question, then £10 million for Liam Delap is something you could realistically pay. And then if you tie him down to a 4-year contract, then if he has an amazing season in the Championship, he becomes worth 20 million.
Yeah, I think it's the gamble, isn't it? If you spend £10 million on him and he just doesn't suit Tim Walter's system whatsoever and has a spell similar to how we did with Stoke and
is he aggressive against the ball, Ant?
See, I think Delap, the reason I'm so desperate for us to go back in for Delap is because I actually think he'd be perfect for Walter's system. Okay. Because with Rosenior, it was, if Delap didn't play, we struggled to get any sort of get into the spaces, get high enough the pitch to actually put pressure on the opposition's defences to create enough chances to score goals. We really struggled to break teams down. What Delap is so good at doing is he will drop out of his position as obviously as the number 9 up front. He drops deeper, collects the ball, and he has this sort of freakish ability that he's so quick and comfortable on the ball that he'll just run the ball himself past 2, 3, 4 players and take us up the pitch single-handedly, and then give us the platform. He'll pass it out wide, and we're in a good position. He's one of those really rare outlets that, if you're desperate to get the ball up the pitch, he can hold it up, but he can also carry the ball up there himself. So he has got that sort of off the ball aggression anyway. Yes, his finishing at times maybe needed to get a bit better, but he's a young striker and he will get there. And he scored obviously nearly 10 goals, but he was injured for 6 months. I'd have comfortably said he'd have scored 15 plus for us if he was injured fit all season. So realistically, with the going rates of strikers nowadays, if you're going to buy a guaranteed 15 to 20 goal a season striker at the Championship level, you're probably looking at £10 million. Look at, Ellis Sims. He was £8 million at Coventry.
Well, especially given that there's a bias. I think the economy of football is such that there's a bias for younger players. And Liam Delap is about 21, 22, something like that.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that he's on the younger side means that he's a potential asset. So again, if he it's hard to value him at more than 10 million because he's not done it over a full season. But if he does it over a full season, then all of a sudden his value increases exponentially because of that youth bias that we have in the football's economy now.
Yeah. I think Delap's probably one that I'm desperate for us to bring in, and then I think I'd like Ohio to come back. I'm not sure if in a permanent fashion or on a loan again. He's still young and raw, and maybe his ball control needs to be worked on a bit. But there's certain promise there, and I think what Ohio brought that a lot of people tried to justify for Billy Sharp was his sort of charisma and his ability to be a really real big asset in the changing room. So if you ever looked at the behind the scenes videos and training videos and that, Ohio's literally, he was like the joker of the squad. He was constantly making people laugh, doing whatever he does and things like that. He was instrumental, I think, for probably morale in the phase of the end of the season where we were, struggling to pick up results. He came on off the bench and scored really important goals, but also that dynamic off the pitch as well. So I'd like us to see Ohio come in, but I wouldn't be too disheartened if he didn't come back. But yeah, we do need 2 or 3 strikers.
Sure. Joshua David has said Delap is having a medical with Ipswich, so so you might need to rethink your options.
It'd be a good signing. I'd be very surprised if a Premier League side. I mean, because I think Southampton were in for him as well. My logic behind it is that Liam Delap's had 6 decent months at Championship level. So for me, if a Premier League side were to spend a lot of money on him, to bring him into their side and hope that he scores enough goals to keep them in the league, I think it's a bit of a gamble, because usually sides at that, like your Ipswiches now that have been promoted, you're looking for guaranteed goals. You need somebody that I'm 100% sure that Liam Delap will go on to be a good enough player for the Premier League. But is he good enough right now? I'd be surprised, kind of thing. But
I think Ipswich couldn't sign him with the thought that he might do well, but he's also a big asset if he does do it in the Premier League. But if he doesn't, he would be one of the best strikers in the Championship in 12 months' time. So that's probably part of their thinking, I think, as well, and a potential asset. So I wanted to quickly ask you about youth. We mentioned Henry Sander, who's there, Tyrrell Sellers Fleming as well, who's only 19. I suppose, I don't know if you know much about either of them specifically, or if not, do you know, anyone we still need to mention in terms of youth prospects to watch out for, or is Matty Jacob the main one we should be looking at?
Sellers Fleming was one who was in really high regard with Rosenior. He really, really rated Sellers Fleming, and he came off the bench a few times under Rosenior in the Championship. Like you say, he's still very young, inexperienced at this level. So really,
how did he do in those cameos, Ant? Do you any idea?
He did okay. I think it's so tough to ask a young player to jump up from obviously the under-23s level to the starting 11 and be the lone striker.
Sure.
It's such a tough role to do. I'm not entirely sure, because we didn't really see enough of him to say what kind of striker he is. But I would be, when you see him playing, his ball control was at least decent enough to say that there's certainly a player there. I think he's probably one the club's going to look at to going out on loan to perhaps League One or somebody and see if he can get a full season under his belt.
Okay, League One's a decent level, to be fair. That's encouraging.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Going to a Championship club, I think, is probably a step too high, because if we're saying he's perhaps not ready for Championship, then
you're not going to get Championship.
Yeah, so and similar with Sander, he's come in with really, really high praise for. I think he was at Southend before us. He's another striker that's got a really bright future from the sounds of it. Again, we've not really seen anything of him. I think Joe from our pod probably will know more, because he goes to the youth games and sees them a lot more. So I'll have a word with him and ask him. Obviously, I'll let you know what he says about him. But it's a case of we've got 2 young strikers that in the future might be very good, but at the minute we need 2 dependable strikers, because the Championship's an unforgiving league that you need to make sure you've got players that know how to put the ball in the back of the net.
Can Oscar Estupinian be one of those dependable strikers?
Yeah, Oscar's such a bizarre one, because to me, if we had Oscar from January last season, whilst the Lap was injured, I think we make the top 6.
Interesting.
By no means is he really, really technically gifted. Yes, his first touch has got a lot to work on. Yes, he's not going to hold the ball up for you, and yes, he's not going to link up play that well. What Oscar Estupinian is he's a goal scorer. He's a poacher. You put him in the box, and if the ball falls to him, he'll score. That's literally his game. The reason he fell out of favour with Rosenior is because Rosenior wanted somebody who could lead the line and link up play and be good on the ball. And Oscar, that's not his strength. So it's understandable in that sense. But then when it got towards the end of the season where perhaps results were more important than performances and we needed a goal scorer, obviously Delap was going to be injured for the rest of the season, he would have been a player that, there was a few chances I thought of where if that falls to Oscar, that's a goal. He knows how to score goals.
But then do you create the same volume of chances if you have Oscar Estepinian in the team?
Yeah. Well, that's the question. But I mean, the thing is, like we were at another stage again where we were playing the likes of, Tufan or Carvalho as the striker, because our strikers were injured. We were in the same situation as we were the season before, with a non-natural striker leading the line. So you might as well have someone like Oscar who would score you, I would comfortably say, from January to the end of the season, would have got us 5 to 10 goals.
Yeah.
He's what you sacrifice in terms of on the play you're going to get in chance conversion. That's the kind of player he is. But I also get the standpoint from the fact that he's probably on high wages, and the fees we got paid to take him on loan, we were getting like £1 to £2 million just to take him on loan for them seasons. So it made sense. And I think I think where he's at on loan now, have I don't know if it's an option or an obligation to buy him in summer for another two or 3 million. So
okay, well that adds the kitty, doesn't it?
For someone we signed on a free, we could potentially have made like £3 or £4 million off him on 2 loan spells. So I do get that, but again, from a fan, when you're watching your team struggle to score goals and you've got a goal scorer out on loan, it's quite bizarre.
Yeah, I get that. Do you know much about Nathan Tinsdale or Rocco Coyle at all?
Rocco Coyle, obviously Louis' younger brother. I think he's, again, from what we've seen of him in terms of footage and stuff, he's well thought of amongst the squad and the staff. Mm-hmm. You can usually tell that a young player is decent because the manager and the coaching staff regularly talk about these players and hold them in such high regard. So, and he's one of them. So I'm hoping that he gets. See, Hull City's problem is that we're no good in the cup. So in the cup competitions, when these players could get game time, we tend to go out in the first round, so we don't get to see much of them in the first team. So hopefully we get a little bit more of a dabble in the cup this season, and to see some of these players like Rocco Coyle and Stan Ashby and Harry Sandat, players like that we can actually see play and understand what kind of player we've got on our hands. Because like we say, the current state of the squad, we might end up needing them come the start of the season.
We'll see. So expectations for Hull City, Ant. I think a little bit difficult to define for me, maybe not difficult to define for Acun Ilıcalı, because I think he's going to be very bullish in his ambitions of a top 6 finish. But if I look at the squad, certainly as it is right now, I would say the players that I think are good enough for a starting, for a top 6 side, I would say Louis Coyle, Jacob Greaves, Alfie Jones, Sean McLaughlin, and obviously only 2 of the last 3 that I've mentioned will start simultaneously. I would say Ryan Giles, but there's debate over whether he's going to go. I would say Jean-Michel Seri, although again, debate over whether he might go. Regan Slater, possibly Umar if he develops as hope, so I'll put a star next to him, and Jaden Philogene. So how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there's 9, but 4 of those could go, and the drop off from those 9 to the rest of the squad is pretty significant. So that's the concern that I've got, that you're only going to end up with like 5 players that are good enough for those ambitions, and realistically you're not going to get 6 starting players that are top 6 level. So that for me is the challenge that Hull City face if we're looking at the big picture.
Yeah, I think if you have a quick scroll down, obviously the Hull City hashtag at the minute, there's understandable worry, because like you say, we know full well that Greaves and Philogene are going to go. It's likely that Ryan Giles goes for some bizarre reason, although I'd like to think that doesn't muster and we keep him. There's still question marks over the likes of Seri as well. And it's just one of these where you just think, okay, if you're going to lose these players, we need to make sure we reinvest that money so smart, because like you said, these players are absolutely crucial to what we did last season. We missed out on the top 6 by 3 points.
Yeah.
It's a case of we didn't need to change much. We just needed to be a bit more offensive. But then losing your entire squad of players and the best players that you've had, and then have to assemble basically a new
turnaround as well. Yeah. Like we're already in early July now, and the season's going to start in a month. So it's not like it's the end of May or the beginning of June where you've got a lot of time to look at and sell cash in early and then really rebuild with it's actually things are going to have to move quickly.
Yes.
And the timescale is a bit of a concern from my point of view.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, we've got to bring him in. You've got to agree the fee. You've got to agree the contract. And then there's the whole shebang of waiting until it be announced. Then they've got to come in. They've got to get used to the area. They've got to get used to the squad, the new manager, the style of play. And then you've got to bed them all together, like a whole squad of new players. And we've seen before it can work, very rarely, but you do see loads and loads of examples of massive overhauls of squad where it takes a few weeks for them to get going. And at the minute, I mean, Acun has said that the fact that we missed out on the top six was not the reason that Rosenior was sacked. It was obviously their breakdown in relationship and the style of play that was the real budgeting. But you would imagine, his aim this season must be top six. But then you look at our current squad and you think that's a bottom half table team. It's if we're calling upon the likes of Ryan Longman and Jason Lakilo because Omer's injured and they're nowhere near the same caliber of player, and you would like to think that the likes of Ryan Longman would be moved on for a permanent fee somewhere, but then again you're leaving your squad more and more thin. So we do desperately need to start getting players in. I understand that there's still weeks left, and realistically, even when the season starts, the transfer window is still open, but then it gets to a point where teams can start asking for more money on players, and it starts to get a bit daft when the season starts, because they might play a game and play better, and then they ask for an extra couple of mil on them, and it gets a bit daft. So, we really need to start getting the ball rolling and get 2 or 3 players in quite quick to get the fans back on, obviously, an optimistic side of things, and so that we know where we're heading. Because I think it's all well and good the club coming out and saying, we want to make sure we're signing proper players for the system, rather than just getting players through the door for the sake of it, which obviously is what you want to hear. Yeah. But again, like you said, there's still the realistic nature that there is a time clock on this transfer window and to the start of the season. So we realistically know that the friendlies aren't far away now either. So we've got to really start getting the ball rolling, hopefully get this striker that Acun's mentioned through the door early doors next week, and let's start bringing some players in and see where we're going to be. Because the problem is we don't know who's staying and who's coming in. So we're a bit limbo a minute.
Certainly are. And what's the biggest reason to believe that Hull City are going to meet their objectives this season?
I think the fact that we've got the owner that we have, he's got enough credit in the bank for us to believe that he knows what he's doing. We've steadily progressed and finished higher every single season that he's taken over. I think we finished 19th the first season, then 15th, and then we've just finished 7th. There's a clear plan and there's clear progression. I think, yes, at the minute it's a bit of a worry. But I think as a club, we just have to hope that the club know what they're doing and they've got a clear plan. They seem smart enough guys that they understand, and they're probably reading everybody having a bit of a threat at the minute, and then laughing to themselves thinking they don't know we've got about 5 signings ready to walk through the door. Let's just see where we are come a couple of weeks into the season, when we've hopefully got a few signings in the door, and seeing Walter's style of play and hopefully brought up an entertainment factor back to the stadium and up in the atmosphere, and then judge properly come December time. But I honestly think we can still have a decent season. We've got to just see where we are after this transfer window.
Biggest reason for doubt?
The lack of transfers at the minute. I think, like you say, we've took a big gamble. We have. I think even the owners aware of the risk that he's taken in getting rid of Rosenior and appointing somebody like Walter, who's got no championship experience, and then trusting him with the squad overhaul. It is a big gamble. We know that it could result in us challenging for promotion. It could result in us fighting at the wrong end of the division. It's the gamble he's taken. But it could backfire for us, but we just got to hope it's okay.
Give me a number then, Ant, between 1 and 10 to denote your level of optimism for the season ahead.
At the minute, I'm probably at a 6. I'm not too worried at the minute. But it's like we say, the fact that we're not really signing anybody, and the one person we have signed might be on his way out already. It's a bit bizarre. But I think after 2 or 3 signings, when we bring Liam Delap in permanently next week, it'll be fine.
He's having a medical switch.
They don't want him. They don't want him.
And thanks so much for your insight. Some big plans for the podcast coming up for next season? We're
sprucing things up. We're going to try and do extra episodes that are just YouTube commentary that we're not going to release on audio, just so that we've got, obviously, for people who subscribe to the YouTube channel, it's something that you can, a little bit extra shorter videos, things like that, Q&As, all that kind of stuff. And I'm trying to look at doing, live episodes in pubs and stuff like that, so people can come down and have a drink and watch us talk live kind of thing.
That'd be amazing.
So, yeah, we've got a few plans going ahead. We just have to see if we can get the ball rolling in all those respects. Busy times. Obviously, I'm jumping into a new job as well, so it's busy for me. But we've got a good team. We're looking forward to this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, all the best with that. Make sure everyone goes subscribe to Hull and Back on YouTube and on wherever you get your podcast as well. And you've got a website now as well, haven't you? Which is
it's on the back burner at the minute. We had some troubles with the person that was operating it, so it's on the back burner at the minute. Yeah, but we're going to look and try and get it back up and running.
Okay, well, best luck with that. Thanks so much for your insight, Ant. It's been a pleasure to talk to you about the Tigers with this afternoon. You can get subscribed to EFL Debate on YouTube and on Spotify. If you've watched it on YouTube, drop us a comment to let me know how you think the Tigers are shaping up for this season. If you've enjoyed it on Spotify, feel free to leave us a review. That would help us out a lot. And we'll see you again very soon.